I was 52 years old when I finally understood why my parents divorced. My father had been dead for 3 weeks, and I was sitting in his apartment, going through boxes of old papers, trying to sort out his affairs. My mother had been gone for 7 years by then, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about their marriage. I thought I understood the careful distance they maintained after the divorce, the polite coldness at family gatherings, the way they never quite looked at each other. I was wrong about all of it. My parents separated when I was 19. I was in my second year of college, and when I came home for Thanksgiving that year, my father was living in a rented condo across town. My mother told me they had grown apart. My father said they wanted different things. Neither of them raised their voices. Neither of them bad-mouthed the other. The divorce was finalized by spring, and they divided everything with the efficiency of business partners dissolving a company. I remember thinking how mature they were being about it, how civilized. I remember feeling grateful that there was no screaming, no fighting, no forcing me to choose sides. For 33 years, I believed that story. I got married myself, had 2 daughters, built a career. My parents remained cordial. They sat at opposite ends of the room at my wedding, smiled for photographs, wished me well. They did the same at my daughter's birthday parties, at graduations, at every milestone. They were never in the same frame for long, but they were never hostile, just distant, just done. My father lived alone for all those years. He dated occasionally, but nothing serious. He seemed content with his routines, his work, his small circle of friends. My mother remarried after 6 years. A quiet man named Frank, who owned a hardware store. They seemed happy enough. I visited them separately, celebrated holidays in shifts, and accepted this as normal. This was just how divorced families operated. This was just how it was. When my father died, it was sudden, a heart attack in his sleep. He was 74 and had been healthy, or so we thought. I was the one who found him. I had stopped by that Sunday morning to help him move some furniture, and when he didn't answer the door, I used my key. The image of him there, still and grey in his bed, is something I carry with me now. But that's not what this story is about. After the funeral, after the reception, after everyone had gone home, I returned to his apartment to begin the work of sorting through a life. My wife offered to help, but I told her I needed to do this alone. I think I needed the time with him, even though he was gone. I needed to touch the things he had touched, to see the life he had built in his solitude. The apartment was neat, almost sparse. My father had never been one for clutter. I worked methodically through his closet, his desk, his kitchen. I found old photographs, tax returns, warranties for appliances that had long since been replaced. I found birthday cards my daughters had made him, carefully preserved in a folder. I found a watch my mother had given him for their 10th anniversary, tucked in a drawer, still keeping time. It was in the back of his bedroom closet, in a box marked with my mother's handwriting, that I found the letters. There were dozens of them, maybe 50 or more, bound together with a rubber band that crumbled when I touched it. The envelopes were addressed to my father at his office, and the return address was somewhere in Connecticut I didn't recognize. The postmarks ranged from 2 years before the divorce to 6 months after. I opened the first one. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The letter began, "My dearest Thomas." That was my father's name. I sat down on the floor and read it. Then I read another, then another. By the time I had read 5, my hands were shaking. By the time I had read 10, I had to stop and walk to the kitchen for water. By the time I had finished them all, it was dark outside, and I understood everything. The letters were from a woman named Catherine. She wrote about meetings they had missed, conversations they needed to have, decisions that weighed on her. She wrote about loving him. She wrote about a child. She wrote about how sorry she was, how she never meant for any of it to happen, how she understood if he couldn't forgive her. The timeline became clear as I read. The affair had lasted 2 years. There had been a pregnancy. She had miscarried at 4 months. She had wanted to tell my mother. My father had begged her not to. She had ended the relationship, moved away, and continued to write to him, trying to make sense of what they had done. But here's what made me stop breathing for a moment. In the last letter, dated 8 months after my parents' divorce, Catherine wrote, "I know Margaret made the choice she felt she had to make. I know you wanted to tell me the truth, and I know she wouldn't let you. I understand why. But Thomas, you need to know that I never blamed her. I never blamed either of you. What happened to me was not your fault. It was just something terrible that happened. Please stop punishing yourself. Please let yourself live." I sat with that letter for a long time. Then I went back through the box and found something I had missed the first time, tucked into the bottom. It was a medical record, a hospital bill from 34 years ago. My mother's name was on it. The diagnosis was ovarian cancer. The treatment was a complete hysterectomy. The date was 3 months before my father moved out. I drove to my mother's house. It was late, past 10 o'clock, but I knew she would still be awake. Frank answered the door in his bathrobe, took one look at my face, and called for her. We sat at her kitchen table, the same table from my childhood that she had kept through everything. I put the letters on the table between us. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. My mother looked at them for a long time. Then she looked at me. Her face was calm, but her eyes were tired. "I wondered if you would ever find those," she said. I told him to throw them away, but he never could. He kept everything. He always did. I asked her to tell me what happened. She made tea first, slowly, giving herself time. Frank had disappeared upstairs. When she finally sat down again, she folded her hands around her cup and began to speak. She had known about the affair. She had known for most of the 2 years it lasted. She had found a receipt, then a phone bill, then seen them together once, by accident, coming out of a restaurant downtown. She hadn't confronted him. She had been afraid of what it would mean, afraid of losing everything, so she had pretended not to know. She had kept the house running, kept me fed and clothed and oblivious, and waited to see if he would end it on his own. Then she found out she was sick. The cancer was advanced. The doctor told her she needed surgery immediately, that she might need chemotherapy after, that her chances were uncertain. She was 50 years old. She told my father that night. He broke down. He confessed everything. He told her about Catherine, about the pregnancy, about the miscarriage that had happened only weeks before. He told her he had been trying to end it, that he had made a terrible mistake, that he loved her and only her. He begged her forgiveness. My mother said she sat there listening to him, and all she could think was how tired she was. Tired of pretending. Tired of holding everything together. Tired of being afraid. She told him she knew. She told him she had known for a long time. She told him she would have the surgery, and after she recovered, she wanted him to leave. He refused. He said he would stay, that he would take care of her, that he owed her that much. She said no. She said she needed to know she could survive on her own. She said she needed to not wonder, every time she looked at him, if he was staying out of guilt or love. She said she had already forgiven him, but that forgiveness didn't mean they should stay married. It meant she was choosing to let him go and let herself go too. The surgery was successful. She didn't need chemotherapy. By the time I came home for Thanksgiving, she was healed enough to pretend everything was fine. By Christmas, my father had moved out. By spring, the divorce was final. They had agreed never to tell me the real reason. They thought it would be easier for me to accept if they kept it simple, if they made it seem mutual and amicable. They thought they were protecting me. I asked my mother if she regretted it, the divorce, the secrecy. She shook her head. She said leaving him was the best decision she ever made, not because she stopped loving him, but because she started loving herself more. She said the cancer had clarified things. It had shown her that life was too short to spend it performing a marriage for other people's comfort. She said she and my father had both needed to become different people, and they couldn't do that while they were still tied to who they had been together. I asked her if she had really forgiven him. She smiled at that, a small, sad smile. She said forgiveness wasn't a single moment. It was something she had chosen again and again, every day for years. Some days it was easy, some days it was impossible. But she had chosen it because she didn't want to carry anger for the rest of her life. She said my father had carried enough guilt for both of them. She said that was his choice, and she had to let him make it, just like she had made hers. I went home that night and told my wife everything. She listened, held my hand, and then asked me how I felt. I realized I didn't know. I wasn't angry. Not exactly. I wasn't hurt. Not in the way I expected. I felt something else. Something like grief, but not for what had happened. For what I had misunderstood. For all the years I had thought my parents' distance was indifference, when really it was the opposite. It was care. It was the hardest kind of love, the kind that steps back and lets go. I thought about my father, living alone in that apartment for 33 years, keeping those letters, keeping my mother's secret, never telling me what he had done or what it had cost him. I thought about my mother, rebuilding her life, marrying Frank, finding happiness, but never quite erasing that sadness in her eyes when she thought no one was looking. I thought about how much they had protected me from, and how that protection had also been a kind of loss. In the weeks after, I finished sorting through my father's things. I found more pieces of the story, small ones. A journal entry from the year of the divorce where he wrote, "Margaret is right. I have to let her go. I have to let myself go too." A photograph of the two of them from their wedding day, kept in his wallet, worn soft at the edges. A recipe card in my mother's handwriting for his favorite meal, tucked into a cookbook he clearly still used. I gave most of his belongings away. I kept a few things. The watch, the photograph, the letters. I wasn't sure what to do with the letters at first, but then I realized they weren't mine to keep or destroy. They were his, and he had chosen to keep them, and that choice meant something. So I put them back in the box and put the box in my own closet, where they sit now. I think about my parents differently now. I don't think about their divorce as an ending anymore. I think about it as two people making the hardest choice they could make, choosing honesty and solitude over comfort and pretense. I think about how much courage that took. I think about how much love it took, the kind of love that doesn't insist on holding on. My mother is 80 now. Frank died 2 years ago, and she lives alone in that same house, in that same kitchen. I visit her every Sunday. We drink tea. We talk about small things, mostly. But sometimes, when the conversation settles into silence, I look at her and I see all of it. The girl she was when she married my father. The woman she became when she left him. The strength it took to do both. The forgiveness it took to keep living. I'm 54 now. My own daughters are grown. My marriage has had its struggles, its moments where we had to choose whether to stay or go, whether to forgive or hold on to hurt. I think I understand my parents better now than I did when I was 19, better than I did even at 52. I understand that love is more complicated than I wanted it to be, that it can be real and still not be enough, that two people can do their best and still hurt each other, that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting, and moving on is not the same as moving away from love. I found out why my parents really divorced, and the answer wasn't what I expected. It wasn't betrayal, though there was betrayal. It wasn't illness, though there was illness. It wasn't lack of love. It was an abundance of it, the kind that knows when to let go, the kind that chooses someone else's freedom over your own comfort, the kind that survives divorce and death and 33 years of careful distance. That kind of love doesn't make sense when you're young. But when you're older, when you've lived enough to know how hard it is just to keep showing up, to keep choosing kindness when bitterness would be easier, you start to understand. My parents loved each other enough to end their marriage. They loved me enough to let me believe it was simple, and they loved themselves enough to build new lives from the ruins of the old one. I'm still learning what that means. I think I'll be learning it for the rest of my life.